Hello, and welcome to Coach's Corner, brought to you by the Endurance Lab, where the coaches from the lab recap the week and answer a couple questions from you from the forum. My name's Jason Flores, one of your Endurance Lab coaches, and I'm joined today by Taya Friedstein. Good morning, Taya. How are you doing?
Good morning. Doing great, Jason. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. I am sitting here amongst the boxes as I am about to make a move of my pain cave, but I've managed to save a 5 by 8 foot space for me to sit and still do workouts this week. Until the minute we move, I will unhook the computer and move my training station. So
That's
hopefully,
perfect.
hopefully we'll be up and running pretty quickly on the other side. So I will definitely have to post some pictures. But man, have we had an active week with our riders? I feel like there's a lot of engagement. People are getting outdoors, a lot of stories to share. So that's exciting.
It's been a great week already. So even though it's the first one of the Power Lab here, yes, like you said, we've been having a lot of comments and activities. So it's been great.
Yeah, and absolutely. So what we'll do is let's jump straight into the lab since we are chatting a bit about it. We'll start with the strength side. Ian Murray is not with us today. He is also in the midst of a move. But if you take a look at our schedules for this week, we've got a couple key things, but a couple maintenance things. And I will try to harness my inner Coach Ian in me. We do have a dynamic strength early in the week. As far as making sure we are maintaining our core stability and that sort of thing. But throughout the week, you'll see peppered stretching for cyclists, a great video that Taya has shot for post-cycling or post-workout movements to help kind of loosen things up. I have shown this and shared this with some of my in real life athletes as well, and they have started some of these movements and found that they are a lot less sore on the days after. So definitely something to look at. And then of course our good old 15-minute core workout, just to make sure that you have got something to do and make sure that you are maintaining those on the days that you have less intense rides. So as we look at the schedule, Taya, it could look very kind of busy for our riders. So what are some of the reminders or what are the keys that we have kind of like whittling this down for each of our unique riders or how we put it together? What are some tips that we can have for them to not feel overwhelmed as they look at the whole week's schedule?
So taking into account, of course, where you are at in your fitness coming into the lab, if you look at the schedule, there's a lot here, like Jason said. But really, there are riders who are building up for long events. And what we do, we include those rides in here as optional rides, additional rides that you would do on the back end of a workout. So let's say you do a workout and then you stretch your time on the bike by an hour 15, an hour and a half, up to 2 hours, up to 3 as the lab progresses. So keeping in mind when you have those events to help you build for those, that's when we have these optional rides. Or if you want to enjoy the weather really and spend more time on your bike, this is also a good way to, it's really a guideline for you to build it up. The other things that are here, not everybody's going to be doing absolutely everything that's on a schedule. So again, I would say on the bike side, you have 3 solid workouts. You should aim for those. Those are 3 intensity workouts. If you have a race on a given week, of course, that race replaces a workout. If the race is long, it's a gravel race, it's 60 miles, it's 100 miles, then you probably need to replace 2 workouts on the weekend, for example. So, because you're going to need a rest day. So keeping those things in mind, if it's a local crit race on a Tuesday, that replaces a 1-day workout, but have a day off afterwards. So keeping those things in mind, always consult with us in the forum. We're happy to respond to any questions that you might have according to your schedule, how to taper for your event. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about skills in the lab as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, the week could easily be done for those riders, let's say, that are doing the 4 to 6 hours, just getting that minimum, bang for your buck. I'm looking at the calculation being about 4 hours and 45 minutes of actual cycling time and about 50 minutes of strength and stretching time over the whole of the first week. So that's kind of on the low end. And as like Taya said, it can be stretched to whatever your levels are. And if you need help on figuring out exactly how much you need to move it for your goal event, let us know. Head up to the forum, endurancelab.fit, post up, and we could definitely talk about that. All right, Taya, tell us a little bit about the skills and the exact workouts that we're doing and kind of what we're shooting for this week.
So we have been focusing this week on threshold and VO2. The 734 threshold steps was a really good workout where we had 7-minute intervals, 4 7-minute intervals that spent quite a bit of time at threshold. We start building it up from tempo to sweet spot to threshold. So it's not overwhelming. It's not a long timing threshold, but it gets you the stimulus enough to build that muscular endurance. So this is a good combination of zones here. And then we had a VO2 workout, which was a combination of 30 on, 30 off, and sprints. So we do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, and on the fifth 30 seconds is really a 20-second hard effort VO2 followed by an all-out sprint. So this is designed to help you train how to sprint from an already high power. So you're already, let's say at the end of a race, you're already putting the power down, but then you're able to stand up and close that race by putting down more power. And we'll talk a little bit about VO2 workouts here when we talk about hot topics in the lab and how to approach those. Then we had the pyramid digs. The pyramid digs is a tough workout because there's not a whole lot of rest in between, and there's quite a bit of time spent at threshold. So on that one, you're just hovering below and above threshold in various durations. And so it's a harder workout from a standpoint compared to the first one on the week, but it is later in the week. So you're getting the groove of things, and a good one to do on, let's say, a Saturday, because your Sunday ride will be more of a tempo ride or an outdoor group ride. So you can recover from that.
Absolutely. So the 30-30s, classic VO2. I just wanted to comment. You get started and you're like, okay, 30 seconds. I could do this. And then you're just, I want it to be over by the last sprint, and you're just trying to put it all out. So really, really challenging. But with the rest with that, and that's the key with VO2 workouts, is that long rest in between that allows you to kind of replenish yourself and get yourself ready for the next next set. Key being, if in fact the rest is more than 1-to-1, you are able to put out another VO2 effort if it is complete rest. So definitely key for that as skills come by this lab on that workout this week. All right. So with this week and the intensity that we've been talking about as far as skills with the threshold and the VO2 and then the digs for this week, as this will continue, I did want to talk a little bit about kind of fueling on the bike and make sure that we are fueling at this time. So just a quick topic here. I've got another great article from Data Driven Athlete about talking about, are you fueling enough on the bike? A question we should ask ourselves, not just while we're on the bike, but before our rides, after our rides, as well as during our rides. So we're going to quickly delve into that, chat a little bit about that, and then kind of go from there. We'll give you a couple examples and samples of what we do and kind of what we recommend. So just a quick kind of overview of that. So talking about before a ride, you want to make sure that you're topping off. So that we're talking about, the couple hours, starting, let's say, 3 hours before your ride, or right before your ride if it's a very early morning ride. We want to make sure that you're topping off your glycogen stores by consuming anywhere from 200 to 300 grams of carbohydrates in a mixed macronutrient meal. And we're talking, this is a further out, 3 or 4 hours out. So if you're 30 to 60 minutes out before your ride or race, you're looking at 50 to 75 grams of carb. We're looking for a pretty simple carbohydrate here, nothing too difficult to digest, because you don't want that to be happening kind of during your race or your ride. So nothing too fibrous, fruit, vegetables, pretty tough to do that early on. And then right before, you could easily knock down something like 30 or 50 grams of carb, depending on the intensity of the ride, making sure you're staying in front of all of this. So, but the main thing is we need to pick a strategy and stick to that, and make sure that we are going through with our plans, which we'll share some stories here as we move forward. And then carbs during a ride. It's going to be different for everyone, but one, make sure you're eating something. But of course, carbs before your ride does help. As the ride extends from 90 minutes or longer, and above the 1 hour mark for sure, it's important to maintain the glucose levels that you have. Not saying that you have to replace them 100%, but in simple terms, you just need to absorb carbs while you're riding so that you have that essentially glucose on board for those efforts that you want to put out, whether it be a KOM attempt, a sprint, just efforts, towards the end. You need to make sure that you have food on board. And then the question is are you fueling enough? And the question comes from or roots in how long are you riding? If you're riding anywhere from 30 to 75 minutes, like I mentioned, under the 90-minute mark, you're really going to be fueling only a small amount. But you're looking at 2 hours plus or 2 hours and above, you're looking about 30 grams per hour. And most people can do 30 grams per hour pretty easily. But if your ride is extending to 2 to 3 hours per hour, you're looking to try to get yourself trained to put about 60 grams per hour in. And yes, that does include the first hour where you're not hungry and the intensity may not be high. You need to plan for the 60 grams, but not only plan, but also practice putting this in on your longer training rides, that it gets to the threshold around 60 grams per hour about putting about absorption in the body. So you need to find a mixed way of putting this in, whether it be from solid foods and as well as hydration. It's super important. When the rides get above 2.5 hours, Ted, did you have a comment there?
I was going to say sometimes it's hard to remember to eat, and sometimes it's also hard to want to eat.
Yes.
But unfortunately, we can't wait for our stomachs for the hunger signs. If you wait for that, it might be a little bit too late. So this is where the point that you made is important, where you say you have to just plan on it and take those in and get your body used to it too.
Yeah, it's super important. Early on, none of us wants to put 60 grams per hour in, but if we know we're going to have a long day, 2 to 3 hours, and you don't get the food in, it's going to make it a very long 2-3+ hour ride. So when you get to the 2.5 hour plus ride, we're looking at about, above 60 plus. Some of the science is showing 90 grams. Very, very few people are able to put in 90 grams per hour and absorb it. But you really need to kind of look into what's called multiple transporter sources. But in simpler terms, you need to mix essentially glucose, fructose, or some kind of mix to get this, ratio into your body. Like I was saying, between hydration mixes, solid foods, and other sources to get food in. And so there are some resources for that. And I will post the article here and they've got some good links. So essentially what we're looking at is when you're looking at samples of what does it look like before rides, during rides, and after rides. For me, for samples of what I do well with a good amount of rice. It's a very slow burning, simple sugar kind of on the bike, rice cakes and things like that. With a mix of banana, during a ride, a lot of people do that. That's about 30 grams of carbohydrates there. Rice has got about 60 grams per cup. Usually about do two or three rice cakes with that 60 grams. And then I'm a big fan of maple syrup or your hydration drink. That will be anywhere from 15 to 20 grams in your hydration drink. So a good mix of that could be what you're looking for kind of as you go. So you essentially need to try to put these all together. There's not really black and white rules of what you should and shouldn't eat, but you need to figure out what works for you and what makes your stomach feel comfortable, because that's super important. And the things to remember are how long is your ride, how many grams of carbs per hour you're going to put in, and then what food you're going to use. They've got a great little table, and I'll post up just the table itself. You kind of get an idea. And so when you get your ride and you know how long you're going to go, you can put these things together: your event length, your carbohydrate grams per hour, and the food that you're going to take in. So super important. So eating carbs before and during a race, super essential. And identifying the intensity and duration is also important. So essentially, making sure you do these things and practice your carb fueling approach. Making a plan the same way we do for a workout if you're going outdoors, super important to do. If it means writing it on your leg, as a lot of our endurance lab riders tend to do, write it down, what you're going to be eating, or have some plan in each of your pockets, set alarms on our Garmin's, whatever it may be, just to make sure that we're getting.
And two comments there. So on the Garmin, if you have the auto pause for your bike computer, then that time is not going to be accurate, because there's riding time and there's passing time. Right. If you're doing riding time, you might be also waiting too long to eat. So you have to really have a clock somewhere that you can look at, your watch. And then the other thing is bonking can have signs that not everybody might recognize. So some of the signs that you might be low in fuel and hydration might be just negative thoughts. And you might think to yourself, oh, I got to get out of this funk because it's all on my mind. But in fact, starting to think that this ride sucks, I'm not strong today, it's not a good day, or you start to get grumpy, these are signs that you are bonking, believe it or not. So hydration and fueling, very, very important.
Super. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I know, Tejas, you have a couple things that we've got on our agenda here that looks super kind of like right in what we're talking about. We've got a lot of people talking about fueling and that sort of thing. So yeah, let's just continue that conversation there.
Sure. So a lot of us have been training inside in our basements, garages, etc. And a trainer for many months in the winter, and we're getting outside now and riding longer. A couple of things feel different. You're outside, and let's say you're doing workouts outside, and I noticed this in the last couple of weeks. Doing the same effort outside is different because you have to deal with the heat, you have to deal with wind, you have to deal with traffic. All of those things sap your energy. When you're on a trainer, all you have to do is worry about your legs and your numbers. But when you're outside, there's all these other things to deal with, and even your body moves more. So you are spending more energy outside. Another reason to fuel well, but also another reason to not be concerned that you're not being able to put the same power outside that you're doing inside. It's really a matter of, well, for one thing, it's not as steady, right? It's not like you have a steady, some people do have steady stretches of roads that they can go to and do their intervals, and that's wonderful, but not many of us. And so there's that variation in power, and then there's all these other things to deal with. We talked about riding in the heat and the effect of dew point and how those affect performance and how to manage those in our last podcast. So check out the last episode 26 on that for more details. But the other thing is traffic, and that goes both ways. That's for us. We have to deal with traffic. Of course, we have to be attentive, but the drivers also coming out of the winter season, they're not used to seeing bikes on the road. So it's retraining their brain and their eyes. So we need to be extra careful. Make sure you're wearing very visible clothing. You're wearing a bike light, a rear light, a front light, even during daytime. You have those that blink. You have light colored clothing, and be extra careful. Just this weekend, I was riding outside, and there was a group of 6 cyclists about, 500 meters in front of me. And we're riding on a Sunday morning through an intersection. We had the green light. This driver completely blew the red light, completely. Just didn't even look. Just went right through that red light. And from where I was looking, I saw that car hitting the cyclists. That's how close it was. It didn't. Thank goodness. It didn't happen. But from where I was looking, I swear I was waiting for it to happen. So drivers are not trained for some are just not friendly to cyclists, but just remember all of those things. And again, being outside, you have to deal with all these other elements. So it takes some getting used to, again, after being indoors for so long.
Yeah, super, super. Yeah, I mean, as we all transition, I mean, we're all drivers as well as riders. So making sure that we respect that space. Obviously, we know, our friends, or it could be us out there on the road. So making sure that we are visible and are respecting the rules when we're out there to do our part, to play a good example is super important.
Yeah. And so then we talk about all these long rides and events that we might have on the weekends. If you have a long event on the weekend, plan for easy days leading up to it. It doesn't have to be a week if it's not your A event. But don't go on the day before and do a hard workout or get excited on the ride that you do because your legs are feeling good. Save those legs for that event that you have on the weekend. And then the next day, you probably need a day off or an easy day. So do an easy spin. Keeping those in mind, again, consult with us in the forum. We're happy to help you with those. And I think that was the only points that I had on the long rides and events during the weekend. We talked a little bit about the crits as well, or shorter races.
Yeah. I think one thing to remember is that, we're used to either 1 hour or, anywhere from 1 to 2 hour plus here on the trainers. As you do head out, you do need that rest beforehand, and realize that your 2.5, 3 hour group ride will have a certain amount of intensity kind of, bunched together. And then there'll be, kind of more chill or relaxed parts in between. So intensity may not be as high. One thing I do get when riders do get outside, they feel like our workouts are actually harder when they're all put together than your actual rides outside. And if in fact this is feeling that way, that means it's actually working. This is how it's designed to be, so that you have the fitness in order to have a good time. The way I explain it is that our riders, our endurance lab riders, are no longer trying to get their intervals done when they're outside, trying to get a VO2 max interval off the front, trying to chase with a sprint off the back. What they're able to do is enjoy their rides. Go out there on your sports use, your Grand Fondos, your longer rides, and enjoy the company, enjoy the ride, enjoy the scenery. Why? Because you have the fitness to be able to do that and not have to worry about holding on to the group.
Right, you're not in a hurt locker the whole time.
Exactly. So, all right.
In talking about going up in front and doing VO2 intervals, one other word of caution on VO2 workouts. So we have those on the calendar. And for those of you who like numbers and like to look at measurements of your fitness, and you look at a summary at the end of the week, and if you use Training Peaks, you're looking at your training stress score, you're looking at the training session for the VO2, and you look at the intensity factor for that particular workout. For VO2 workouts, those can be very deceiving. And that is, in fact, if you look into Training Peaks itself and their library, they even explain that IF, TSS, those measurements they have their limitations when it comes to VO2 efforts, when it comes to all-out efforts. The reason for that is performance in those high-intensity workouts depends on short duration power output, right? So you're going super hard for very short periods of time, 30 seconds, a minute. And those are not directly dependent on an athlete's FTP. So when we put out a workout, and this is also something to keep in mind as you do these VO2 workouts, when we say, let's say all out, when we say go as hard as you can, even though there's a number, a percentage of FTP for you in that particular workout, that is just something to put in there as a proxy as on the all-out efforts anyway, right? If we have a prescribed 2 minutes at 120%, that's 120%. But otherwise, it really depends on the rider so much. So it's not related to FTP.
Right.
So those short durations, they are the critical point, I guess, I'm trying to make here is an athlete's short duration power is not directly dependent on their FTP. Short duration power has greater dependence on a combination of training specificity, so how you train, and a rider's genetic makeup. A lot of people don't have a lot of, let's say, what's considered a high FTP or power to weight ratio, but they can go out and do a very high short interval and sprint, right, for example. So that, some of the factors are glycolic ability, neuromuscular coordination, and the muscle fiber type. So athletes with more fast twitch muscle fibers with the proper training will be able to produce significant amounts of power for short durations. And compared to the slow twitch athletes, right? Again, with the appropriate training. So the point here is those VO2 workouts, if you're only looking at numbers, don't be fooled to think that, oh, this is an easy workout because the IF is only 0.8. Right. Or it's just 80% intensity at the end of the day. It can be costing you much more because it really is not dependent on FTP.
Right. Essentially, the time window that we're looking at is we're looking at any effort between around 3 minutes to about 8 minutes in length, anywhere from 110% to even at 100. I mean, we've got workouts up to 135 and 140%, depend on the short side of things. So for each of the riders, you're going to find a strength that you feel that can fit and work for you. Maybe you're better at shorter intervals at higher power. Maybe you are longer drawn and you can do 125, 130% at 5-6+ minutes, that sort of thing. So really, it's just kind of a feel for you, and that's the variable part of VO2. But here's the thing: anytime you get above 110, 120% of that of your FTP, you're working that range, and it's a self-selecting range, because if you start out too hard and you go 140%, let's say, of your FTP, and you're trying to go for 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, at some point your body will self-limit itself and it will drop yourself down, and there's no way you'll continue. But if in fact you're continuing for a long period, the classic is 5 minutes above 120%, then we definitely need to look and see if there might be time to kind of bump the whole scale up, because that's kind of like the benchmark, 5 minutes at 120%. If you're able to do that, then in fact we may need to bump the whole scale forward. So just something to think about.
Mm-hmm. I guess one other topic I'll bring in here, and this is being back on the bike after an injury. And we'll have Coach Mitch back here to talk about his experience and a little bit about this topic in a little more depth in terms of the emotional side of injury. But a couple of things to keep in mind: if you hurt yourself either through you had a crash, or you fell down the steps of your house, and we actually had a lab member go through that. So unfortunate. There are a couple of things that happen, right? Even though you might be feeling okay to be back on the bike, keep in mind that our bodies tend to block the amount of effort we're able to put on a bike after an injury. And this is self-preservation mechanism, but also a way of your body to heal itself and say, let's not stress ourselves here too much with this workout, because I need the energy and the resources to heal this other part, right? So when you are back on the bike, even though you're, let's say, my example is when I had my crash about 10 days ago, I had only minor injuries, but I was sore in a couple of places, including my hand. So I was able to get back on the trainer and do workouts, but I couldn't go above 90% of FTP. And that's that body saying, nope, stay, let's preserve some energy here. So accept that. And then after a while, you might be surprised. There's also the psychological side of it. You might feel not that great even 2-3 days after, maybe even 5 days after. So it's normal to have the effects, the psychological and the physical effects of an injury lingering on for longer than you might expect if you're just looking at it on paper, because, well, I guess it was just minor. So be kind to yourself as you get it back on the bike after an injury.
Excellent. Really good information there. So yeah, I think just kind of keeping things in perspective and letting your body kind of heal itself. And it may not just be the bruises, the cuts, that sort of thing. The body itself, kind of internally, energy-wise, would also need to be to make sure that it heals as well. Right. So okay. So yeah, looks like we got our two big topics to talk about. Really just making sure that you're fueling enough on the bike, and making sure as we transition to do more outdoor rides, if you're able to get out, and your longer rides, making sure that you are preparing for those. It's super important. And then lastly, with the VO2 workouts that you will be seeing more and more of during the Power Lab here, it is important to find what your strengths are and what your goals will be, and understand that the number that's been put out there is a number as a gauge, but you may be able to go a bit above it, a bit below it, depending on your level of strength. All right, a couple things on the horizon. We just got a couple of reminders here. Just make sure you check out the Endurance Lab forum at www.discuss.endurancelab.fit, or just head to endurancelab.fit and log in. You can get it from there as well. Even if you're not a member and you're just a listener here to the Coach's Corner, we're more than happy to have you. There are open topics that include nutrition, product reviews, recommendations, and things that you and all your friends can participate in. So definitely invite them as well. Taya, do you have anything else for our listeners today?
I would say keep checking in on the forum. We always have the videos about the workouts of the week. Next week, we're going to be looking at some over-under workouts to start the week. We'll have lactate tolerance reps, some VO2s, spending a little more time in VO2, and then a very exciting and tough, but really with a lot of variation, road race simulation at the end of the week.
Yeah, that one looks exciting. Ian puts really good simulation workouts together. If you've had a chance to ride or have seen his skills and drills, very good simulation-wise. So definitely a good one to take a look at. All right. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us today here in the Coach's Corner. And if it's your first time listening and would like to hear more of content from the Endurance Lab, head over to your favorite podcast app, search the Endurance Lab, or head over to YouTube and search the same and click subscribe. For more information on when the next lab is or how to get more information about the current lab that we're in, head over to endurancelab.fit to learn where you can join us to train smart, learn more, and get results. We'll see everybody next week. Thank you.